One. And we are live. Katie Black, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. This is episode 3 of Cory's Conversations. So happy to be joined by my friend Katie Black, who we haven't seen each other in, a couple of years now.
Yeah, year and a half.
Yeah, you're over in North Carolina now. But it's, I started doing the podcast and put some feelers out to people that I wanted to talk to. And, you reached out and said you wanted to chat about a bunch of different things. So we're going to talk about all sorts of stuff, mental health being one of them, with the current times of people being at home and wanting to have something to focus on. I think mental health is something that hopefully we're not overlooking. A lot of my friends and coworkers have been focusing on the physical side of it and how we keep people physically healthy and motivated while they can't go to fitness clubs, obviously over here in Washington State. What's going on over in North Carolina with the virus? And
Currently, we're kind of on a partial quarantine. Just kind of encouraging everybody to stay in, but we still have like essentials open. Our restaurants are not fully shut down yet, so I work actually at a brewery, and we're doing like to-go orders. As of now, I don't really know what the next week's going to kind of entail, and we're really just handling it day by day. So just trying to keep in good spirits and do what we can locally really is kind of where we're at right now.
Cool. Well, cool. That's the right attitude. And I know you're a musician and you've been, playing music for how long?
I've written music since I was really young. I quit playing honestly for about 5 years due to mental health issues actually, and kind of just steered away from that and started playing again when I moved back to the States. Back in Washington is kind of when I actually started playing again pretty seriously. And yeah, it's kind of what I've been doing, just hanging out and making sure it's a priority for me is really big.
Oh, cool. Well, yeah, we were just talking before we started recording. You guys are doing a benefit virtual concert kind of thing coming up to support the employees that you guys are going to have, obviously be impacted by shutdowns and stuff. So what's that about?
Yeah, so we were actually approached by a gentleman who is doing this throughout the country. We're the first leg of it. It's going to go through this, I believe, and I think New Orleans are probably going to be the next two after us. But approached us at the brewery specifically and looking locally. For those who don't know, I live in Boone, North Carolina. Appalachian State University is up here, but without the students in town, we have maybe 10 to 15,000 people in town. I mean, we rely heavily on tourists and students at the university to maintain a local economy. And we don't have that right now. So he asked local restaurants if we wanted to set up a music fundraiser. So I'm going to actually be playing a live stream set on Thursday. As of right now, I believe it's 7. Hopefully nothing crazy happens between now and then. But yeah,
Well, cool.
And then we'll just have like a GoFundMe.
That's awesome. Well, we'll make sure to link that in so that people can watch and tune in. You're super talented. I follow you on Instagram, and I hear your acoustic guitar sets, and you'll just get into you're just vibing, and it's really cool to see.
It's really uncomfortable to look back, but
I got to imagine. I mean, I'm not a musician. I played the double bass because I was the tallest kid in 5th grade, and I was the only person that could hold that big thing. That's about my extent of my musical career. I peaked right at 5th grade. How does I mean, it sounds like you use music as kind of that mental health release and good practice. Is that something you do consciously, where you say like, hey, I'm in a place right now where I just got to play?
Honestly, it's just kind of been spur of the moment. I, would be eating at a restaurant and wanted to jot something down. I used to carry napkins in my car because I didn't have anything to write on. It just comes whenever it comes. I really kind of let it flow. I don't sit down as much as I used to and kind of force it, so to speak. I actually wanted to go to school for songwriting, and I kind of looked at what that meant long term, and I was like, I can't sit in a room for 12 hours a day. Like, I don't want this to become a job. So for me, it just kind of comes naturally. Writing, I just put my computer on like I am right now and just hit record, and vibe it out. Whatever comes out, and just, it's a little more of an honest time for myself than I like to admit otherwise. My writing is pretty raw, which I think is sometimes really hard for people to hear because I don't really hold anything back.
What do you mean? What do you mean by raw? Just like the content of, I mean, the lyrics, or?
Very lyrically, I'm just upfront with what I'm feeling. Whether it's about, you know, the good times or the bad times. I just wrote some stuff about my mom that was pretty deep. And I'm not really sure how my family will take what I wrote, but it's just a very honest depiction of what I'm feeling, how I'm feeling, what my mind's saying, what my heart's saying. And I think sometimes with mental health, everyone's afraid to tap into those feelings. So this is just kind of how I get it out.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I was somebody that, and I still am, I think, struggled to express feelings. And you know, you and I, we talked a little bit beforehand, and you and I both have had, you know, interesting childhoods and with parents. You know, I lost my mom to suicide when I was 12 years old, and didn't know, and I don't think you're supposed to know when you're 12 years old how to react to that and how you cope. And everybody kind of finds their own coping mechanism. But I was always somebody that, you know, you talk about not wanting to express your feelings, or kind of struggling to get that out. I was very much that way. And I thought I wanted to be the normal one. You know, I had a brother and a sister and countless other people that were affected by it when she passed. But I always thought I was going to be the normal one. Um, I knew, I guess I didn't know the depth of mental illness at 12, which I guess, again, nobody does. But looking back, you can see real clear patterns. And, um, you know, my brother handled it differently. My sister handled it differently. My brother really kind of shut down and didn't want to talk about it. My sister wanted to talk about it a lot, but didn't know how to. And I wanted to be the normal one that didn't admit that I had something going on. Because I had this weird thing that if I spoke it, it'd be real, I think. And if I said, like, hey, I've got these feelings, I go to these dark places sometimes, and it sucks, that it'd be real. So I just kind of kept myself busy with doing other things. How do you, you know, and you can speak to your family, obviously, but how do you handle and process those feelings? And did it take time for you? I mean, I'm still battling with it, I think, right now. But I mean, where are you at?
Um, yeah, I mean, in all reality, I was diagnosed clinically depressed at 7. Mental health is something that really does fall heavily in my bloodline. To be quite frank, me and my sister um, are two of the only like handful of relatives I have left in my family. A lot of it due to mental health. Um, and as a child, I was pretty much medicated pretty heavily, which you don't really understand that you're going to therapy, you're talking to someone, or that you're getting medicated. You're just like, yeah, I'll take that. Cool. Like, take a glass of milk, take a pill,
Starting
fine.
at 7 years old, you were on depression medication.
Yeah, very low doses of it. But uh, both my parents struggled heavily with mental health issues and never really got help. So, you know, growing up immediately in my household with my parents, that was something that we really didn't talk about. It was something that we just kind of would brush underneath the rug, and it'd be like, hey, Katie's not really feeling well. Let's put her in therapy for a couple weeks and see if she does better. And then I'd get pulled out of therapy. And I don't think my parents really had the tools or the knowledge to help me because they didn't really have that for themselves as well. So that caused a lot of issues for me. When I got older, I actually quit taking medication. And for a rough stint of my life, um, my childhood was not ideal. It was very unhealthy and very toxic. So I actually turned to drugs for a good amount of time when I was younger, and alcohol. And I didn't really change until I left home for good. And I think too, something with mental health is kind of your surroundings. Like what you surround yourself with can really set you up for success or failure. And I learned that in a really, really difficult way.
Do you remember being in that time of your life and even younger? Did you feel this is normal, or other people go? I just remember feeling when I was that young at the time, yeah, this felt normal. This felt, I didn't know any better. And then looking back, you look at some of the things that my mom did and we did. I mean, she would have these episodes of just manic depression where we would go up, we would pick up and go on a vacation to the coast, or we would pick up and we would start doing this project. And as a kid, you're like, oh, this is fun. We're going to go do this fun thing. And looking back at it, you just look at it and you go, oh, that was just an episode of mania. Because I now see those patterns of behavior in myself, and I have those same things of, oh, I want to do this, and I take a moment to reflect, and I'm like, okay, think about what you're doing. Is this healthy for you? I'm somebody that's never been diagnosed. I've never been to, a physician to talk about that. I've relied heavily on friends and family members more recently than I wish I would have, to talk about these kind of things. And part of this podcast and part of why I wanted to talk to you is maybe share some stories that I haven't shared with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
That being one of them. But do you remember feeling normal?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in life, at least just in my perspective, your normal is normal, if that makes sense. So, everything kind of being very taboo growing up and kind of being shut down unintentionally whenever you had a problem. You start just kind of accepting it for what it is and you don't talk about it anymore. And I remember having conversations in high school with one of my really good mentors, and them just being really honest with me, like, this is not normal. This is not okay. And that was the first time anybody called me out about it and was like, we need to like figure something out for you. And then as I've been older, as an adult, you kind of reflect back on these situations and what's going on. And you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
I don't know what normal is. Like, what is a normal? And, I think that's like, that word is such a sad word. Accept who I am. But we have this idea that normal is what you need to be. And I think that's the stigma with mental health. Just own you know what I mean? Like owning who you are, because I am normal.
Yeah. And I think in the last, that I'm talking about 15, 20 years, I'm 20, how old am I? Coming up on 29. 15, 20 years ago, there wasn't that kind of infrastructure and awareness. And now I think more people are doing things like this and they're sharing things publicly that I got to think helps. And it does show everybody. I was listening to another podcast earlier about, other people that I look up to and admire that talk about mental health issues. And it helps you to feel that, okay, you're not the only one. I wanted to be normal I knew after my mom had passed that this should affect me in a way that can really devastate me. And I was told that by, other people in my life. I had this elementary school counselor that, when I was over in school in Spokane, she had reached out and asked me to come talk to a group of teachers in Spokane School District. And I was like, yeah, of course, I'll come talk. And she just wanted me to talk about, my experiences and kind of overcoming adversity and things like that. And I thought at the time, I was like, oh yeah, I'll go talk about this thing. And I was really blown away by the teachers and her, at the end of this 45-minute talk that I gave, people are crying. Teachers that I didn't know, I had no connection to. And I thought, I was like, isn't this kind of like, don't people do this all the time? Like, why is it? And she just looked at me and she's like, you don't know how many people we being the educators in the room see every day that go through the kind of shit that you went through and end up on drugs,
Mm-hmm.
you know, harming yourself physically, doing doing things that are, and to see me, and I was doing well. It was kind of a shock to me, like, oh, I'm that really was a tipping point for me. Like, oh, I'm doing good, and I beat some odds, and I probably shouldn't be doing as good as I was. And
Mhm.
that was something that I kind of tried to rally around, and like, you're doing good, keep doing good. And that inspired me to try and open up more and talk about the things that I was doing, because that recognized that you're not normal. This isn't a unique circumstance. So from there it went weird. It was a polar shift a little bit, because I went from wanting to be normal to, I think now that I've recognized that I have some form of bipolar depression, to how severe it is. I want to I want to feel like I'm the only one that has that. Do you ever have that? Do you ever feel like you want to be not that you want to be, but you feel like, no, I've had conversations with people, and I'm like, you don't understand. You don't know what it's like. When really they do. Everybody goes through garbage. But do you have any of that?
Mm, I don't know. I think for me, um, my story is very unique. I'm aware of that. It's very crazy. I think it scares people for me to talk about it so often, because I am a little open about it. And I'm 26. My life, being divorced and losing two parents within 2 years, it's not normal. And I think that I don't know how I feel about that, to be honest. I guess I've never really had that train of thought hit me um, personally.
Yeah, it's and you I look at people like you that you're independent, you take care of yourself, and that's what I wanted to be for so long. Because when you talk about losing parents, I lost a parent, and was never really close with my dad. And then from 12, I was an adult, and I missed out on a lot of childhood. And I have friends that tell me all the time, like, dude, you were 20 when you were 12. Like,
Yeah.
you weren't as carefree. And I think that still affects me now. Like, even in things that we do, I'm not as carefree as I want to be. I see people that can let go and that can just be that. And I'm always the funny story. The other group of friends we have, they call me the captain, is my nickname with this group of friends. And that was because we went out one night, and it was a bachelor party kind of thing. And I was always worried about everybody else and making sure everybody's safe and getting home. And they're like, dude, can you just cut loose for a second, Captain? Like, will you just be a normal 24-year-old for a half a second? And like, I'm trying to, but I just have this. I always had this. I had to take care of me. I felt like I had to take care of my brother and my sister, and I didn't want to show the weakness, because I didn't have that parental structure.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. I mean, I'm the same way. I joke that I'm just like an uptight bitch now because I'm so like I raised my sister as well. And some can argue on that, but I mean, at the end of the day, I am super protective of her. I'm so used to being in defense mode for myself. And I think that just kind of doesn't go away. And I joke sometimes, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna act my age tonight. And like I don't know how to let loose anymore. And I think that's a really sad reality for us that had to go through a lot of stuff at a younger age. It does affect your mental health. I get super anxious, like, about the stupidest things. I have panic attacks out of nowhere. I mean, you can't really control every aspect of yourself, but I think that, like, being okay with the fact that, like, we can't always let loose, like, I've come to terms with it, and I kind of own it and just joke that I'm like Mom Katie now. you
Yeah.
know and I just think that, like, that's something that someone either is going to understand and accept, or they just won't understand it at all.
What's your anxiety like? I'm not somebody that I've had two panic attacks that I can remember in my life, and I never thought of myself as somebody that was anxious. I'm a fairly confident, proud guy, and so I mean, I never feel like I'm I'm super anxious, but what happens when you go through something like a panic attack, and how often are they?
Um, my panic attacks are definitely triggered more so probably situational than anything at this point. Um, when I lived overseas, my panic attacks were very heavy all the time. They're very debilitating, and they say that panic attacks are your body's way of releasing trauma. So they're not really something that you can control. You just kind of have to let it take its course.
Ride the
Um,
storm, yeah.
and it's painful. I mean, I can get to the point where my entire body is just kind of convulsing. I mean, I look like I'm having a seizure because I can't control what I need to get out. And I don't have a say in it. And it's terrifying. Um,
Yeah, that was the experience that I had. To keep a long story short, we went out one night and we're driving back, and my wife was driving, another friend was with us, and we were coming downtown, and this fight breaks out in the middle of the street. Guys are just bar fight, and so we get out, and they were like on the hood of my wife's car, more or less. And so we get out, and we kind of try to separate the guys, and they started separating, and go to get back in the car, and I look over, and there's this dude laying in the street next to the curb, and I'm like, oh God, I better go check on the guy. So I go over there, and people are kind of standing around, and he's breathing, but he's knocked out cold. And I'm checking his pulse, and I go to kind of put my hand on the back of his head, and just blood all over my hand. And I was with the guy, and his brother actually came over and kind of tried to fight me for a second because he thought I was one of the guys that hit him. I'm like, not, and everybody had to kind of pull him off of me, like, hey man, I'm trying to help and take care of this guy. An ambulance comes, and I helped C-spine him and get him onto a gurney and get him in the ambulance. And I thought, okay, cool, did a good thing. I called 911 before that, and had identified the people we saw get into a car and leave. And so they took off. And then as me and my wife finally got back into the car and we're leaving, um, we saw that car pulled over a mile down the road. And so we're like, okay, cool, they got him. We did a good thing. Cool. And then a couple days later, I given all my information to the police, obviously. And then a couple days later, I get a phone call from a homicide detective that said, yeah, we need to talk to you about your story and try to identify the people that got into the car and what seat of the car they got into specifically, because they were trying to piece together who, from camera footage and witnesses, who hit the guy and what seat in that car did he get into. And I'm like, why are you here? He's like, well, he was in intensive care, um, and ended up dying the next day. And I said, yeah, he's not going to live, and ended up dying the next day. Um, and I remember like coming home and like washing the guy's blood off my hands, and was like, man, I've never been in something like this. And then a couple days later, my wife and I went to the gym, and we're trying to just work out and just relax. And on the way home, I was driving, and it just started kicking in. Just heart starts racing. I thought, am I having like, I was just working out, but like it was just tunnel vision. Body just kind of went numb. And I pulled over. I had to stop and get out of the car, and I was like, Kira, I can't. And she has never seen me go through this, so I had to get out, and I stood on the back of the car with my head and my elbows on the trunk, and was just breathing in and out. And I was like, what? And it's such a surreal feeling if you've never had one. I
right.
mean, um, and you know, I didn't know how to cope with it, and luckily those aren't recurring things for me. But I know people that tell me that they have that weekly, and I'm like, dude, I can't imagine having to go through that weekly, because that one incident is still traumatic for me. I mean, I'm kind of get trembling while I'm talking about it right now. Um, I mean, how do you just try and ride out the storm when you have those? I mean, there's nothing you can do.
Honestly, no. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, my anxiety is different, and I think that's kind of like a correlation that people get really like entangled in, is panic and anxiety. They are two very different things.
Yeah.
My anxiety is more of a daily thing for me. Even sitting, I can tell like I'm totally comfortable. I'm in my bedroom and like in my element, but naturally this like makes me feel more safe as I'm sitting here like holding myself in a chair.
Yeah.
Um, but with the panic, I think it's really, I don't know if you kind of felt this whenever you guys pulled over, but I had totally understood just because I've dealt with it for so long what was going on. And I remember my last panic attack was actually like a couple days before my mom passed, ironically. And I remember my girlfriend, like, I'm out at a Christmas party. I'm having a great time. I got triggered in a really uncomfortable situation and found myself in the bathroom stall with just like my girlfriends like surrounding me while I just losing my mind for a minute, and no one knows what to do. And I got super claustrophobic. So I asked my friend to bring me to my house because I was down the road. And I remember I just kept apologizing. Like, as I'm going through this panic attack, I know exactly what's going on, but I cannot change it. Um, it's kind of like looking in a mirror and recognizing that you're there, but not fully recognizing who you are, if that makes sense.
It's a complete out of body. Yeah. I mean, that's obviously I don't have
So
as much
weird. It's so weird.
anxiety, but I have that with my kind of depression and manic episodes. And I can, that's why I thought I was normal for so long. Cause I'm like, yeah, I've got a little something, but I can see them coming on, and I'll try and actively do things to avoid or at least curtail the damage that I'm going to do. And so I'll see like, yeah, I'm starting to feel this way. I'm going to jump on the motorcycle and go for a ride and just try and clear my head. Or I'm going to get away from people, because I don't want any of this to hurt people or to
And
impact them.
that's what sucks so bad. Like, I've been single for 3.5 years after my divorce because I know that there's X amount of things about myself that I have to work on in order to allow someone in. Um, they're really heavy situations that we go through on a daily basis that people don't fully see or understand. And even my friendships have suffered from this. I isolate myself a lot, and I know that's a really bad weakness, but it's the only thing that I can do to prevent more damage to myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And God bless my wife, because she
She's
somehow, she is a say, she somehow, you've met her, she somehow puts up with my stuff, and we've been dating since we were in middle school. And so she's gone through all the things with me that I don't know how somebody would. And she knows me better than I know myself, because I'll like say something as like a revelation to myself, like, oh, did you know this? And she's like, yeah, dumbass, like I knew you were bipolar when you were 12 years old. Why do you, I mean, you advertise it. There's a big billboard that you don't see, but everybody else can see it. And that was my realization. It's like, oh, I'm not as good at hiding this as I think I am.
right.
I try and be the strong, independent guy that I don't need help. Like I don't need. I remember telling um, family members when my mom passed, they're like, yeah, we'll try and get you into therapy, and we'll talk. And I'm like, I don't need that. I don't need that. I'm tough. I don't need to talk to people. And and I still don't know if therapy and talking to a professional is the best way. I've like I said, I've found outlets through friends and other people that I can have real conversations like this, and this really helps. Um, and it helps to know that people like you understand what I've gone through, and you're struggling as much as me, as much as the next guy, as much as the next girl. Um, but we somehow figure out a way to to get through it. And it's hard. People don't want to talk about that. When people want to offer, it feels like, I think this is my I want to feel unique again, is that people are okay about talking about me or offering to talk about, but when I really start talking about like, hey, yeah, my mom took a bottle of pills and I blamed myself for it because I had moved out of her house when I was 12 years old and was living over with my dad. And I know 100% that because if we were there, that she wouldn't have done that. Like that, then people are like, oh shit, yeah, I really didn't want to talk to you about this. I was just being polite.
Yeah.
But yeah, how do you, I mean, do you deal with guilt at all? I mean, that's something that I've struggled with forever and still do.
I think I always will to an extent. Um, my relationship with my parents I got kicked out of the house my senior year of high school. My parents had a very toxic, I mean, they were, you know, middle school sweethearts from sixth grade through my entire life. But because of their own personal issues throughout their lives, it really took a toll on their marriage. When one was down, the other one was completely like just right down there with them, which I think is a really sad reality that happens in situations like this. And, um, you know, dealing with all of that, um, I didn't have a relationship with them for about a year and a half. We didn't speak. I used to have to like sign my sister out because we went to the same high school. I worked in the office my senior year, and I'd like sign her out of class and like talk to her for like 5 minutes because I could sneak her out. So that was a really uncomfortable time for me. And then fast forward, I get married a year later, and I was a military spouse. I was never home. Um, even if I wanted to come home, that wasn't always an option for me. So there was a lot of distance between me and my parents for the last almost 10 years of my life. And I remember going through my divorce, and I was living in Germany, and I just knew I had to come home. So I booked a one-way flight with my dog, packed a suitcase, and was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And came home to my dad in the hospital. He had a stroke 2 days before my flight. And I really thought, my dad's 49, he's diabetic, but like he's going to be okay. And go another month later, he's diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer and passes within 6 weeks. So you go through the situation where I'm like feeling guilty that I wasn't home. Like I could have been home, and I chose to try to save my marriage that was extremely unhealthy when I could have been home spending more time with my family. And that was a really hard reality for me. And my dad didn't have any hard feelings, but it took me a long time. I had a lot of people that cared about me not really think before they spoke and be like, you should have been home. Why weren't you home? I moved to Washington State through all of this situation because I financially needed the help. So I had come up before I worked for Orange Theory, got a phone call when I was in Spokane. The airport shut down, and I drove 7 hours with my girlfriend and her friend to Salt Lake City, caught a red eye, and he passed within 24 hours of me getting home. So like, there was a lot of guilt. Did I do the right thing? Should I have gone to Washington and flown back? And then flash forward to my mom. She just started really bad stuff the day that my dad passed. She had suicidal ideation through the year and a half that she was alive. And I, once again, from Washington, right before we opened, flew down on a red eye for my mom in the hospital, and pretty much had to have the conversation telling her that I can't live with the guilt of her choices because I can't do anything about it. And so my sister moved out of the house, and my mom just kind of succumbed to substance abuse, and then we kind of got to where we're at now. So guilt will always be there. It's kind of where I'm getting at. I think it will always live in me to a point, but I'm okay living with that guilt because I made those decisions for the best of myself.
Yeah, that's it. I was at an age where I don't think I had the mental capacity to even comprehend what was going on with my mom. And I got to think of that. At least that gave me a little bit of. I can accept that I couldn't do anything. I was 12 years old. What was I going to do? And it wasn't my responsibility. But she also didn't have the support and the the awareness of people to talk to, and it was. So I've started to give myself a pass on that. But I mean, I can't imagine being of your age where you were and seeing that. And, I've had friends that have gone through substance abuse, and a good friend that I played high school basketball with that, we went to his funeral a couple of years ago, and that was a tough one. Cause he was, you saw it when we were in high school that he was, I saw the same problems that I had, and we never talked about it. And then, had another person that worked for us at Orange Theory in South Hill, and Tiffany. And
that was a rough one.
Yeah, that was a tough one. We were all out that night, and then to wake up the next morning and just having her gone was, and I didn't know her that well. I worked around the studio and spent time with her, but for some reason that night we really got to know each other. We were talking about, she's into motorcycles. I just bought a motorcycle, and we were talking about getting on bikes and going for a ride. And she was talking about this riding club that I need to join that her dad's a part of. And like, you made plans to do stuff. And that was the, sorry.
That's okay. Yeah.
That was the second panic attack I had. Was I went to the first time I had gone back to the studio in South Hill and did a workout. Finished up the workout and walked out of I ran out of the studio and started sobbing. It was just, it was tough. But I mean, how do you find ways to cope? I mean, here's the thing, like you gotta keep finding ways to move on, and you have these great people in your life that are no longer there. You want to honor their memory. What do you do besides music to try and put yourself into good places can you feel when an anxiety attack is coming on?
Oh yeah. I've gotten very comfortable with my self-awareness. For my anxiety, to be honest, it affects the majority of my day. Even if it's like not fully in my conscience at the time, it's kind of always on the back burner of what's going on. They put these weird memes out that's like, oh, my depression, I got out of bed okay, like it's fine, but oh, here comes anxiety. And it's like this like balance of like one or the other. And I think for me, like right now I have a sprained ankle because I was climbing. Running was a big outlet for me for a very long time. It's something that I could not have to think about anything else while I'm doing it. And I was able to push my body to limits in a healthy way for me to kind of release. And I think that's why Orange Theory was a great blessing for me in the first year that I was back home. And something that I really looked forward to. That job was a blessing in every aspect of my life at the time. So thank you for having me. But
wish we still had you.
Yeah, working out's a really big one, which I will admit fully I'm not doing great on right now. I work 6 days a week, and honestly, I'm kind of losing in that aspect right now. I think for me too, with my anxiety, is creating safe spaces for me. I don't know if you guys can see how big these windows are back here, but I insisted on this room that's not even a bedroom because I was like, all right, we need sunlight, we need plants. It's those really small aspects of my day-to-day that are important. Making my bed, like that might be the only thing I accomplish. Sometimes just getting in a shower and getting back in bed might make me feel better.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about with somebody else, was routines. And I'm a big routine guy, and I think that stems from me always trying to keep myself busy to not let my mind just kind of wander. And with everything that's going on now in the current climate, you've got people that are thrown out of their routines and they can't go do the things. Yeah.
Not at all.
They can't go do the things they were doing. I mean, they can't, they can't wake up and go to Orange Theory. They can't go get their morning coffee. And, it's those little things. There's this barista down at our Tacoma studio that knows me by name and calls me at, I go in there and she's already got my order. She knows what I like. She knows I like an Americano with light cream. And you don't realize those things are important until they're gone. And I think the one, and maybe we can kind of wrap up on this, but I think the one thing that I've taken away from this, and being in Orange Theory for as long as I have, you value community. And I think everybody else is now starting to see that, and they're starting to value that, like, oh, we were lost in this world of like, oh yeah, I can be disconnected. I have a phone. We can be separate from one another. And now look at it. It's been a week of in this virtual world, and people are already starting to show signs of losing it, and they are starting to recognize how important that community was. And at least for myself, I miss seeing her. We I don't know her last name, the barista. I couldn't tell you her last name. I know she works at Starbucks. We've talked on and on, but just a genuine smile every day. We're never going to lose that personal connection. I think that's something that really helps me. So I'm hoping we get through this quicker rather than later and get back to normal. But I hope people value the community aspect a little bit more coming out of this, and they see, oh yeah, this is important, and my tribe is important, and not being able to give high fives and hugs and that kind of stuff right now sucks for a lot of people, especially those extroverted people that love doing that. So yeah, hopefully we get back to normal. But
Yeah, I hope so. It's I think the unknown is more fearful than the actual reality of like what is going on. I think right now these steps are necessary for the greater good of all of us. And I really have full faith that this whole situation is going to make us better as a whole, or at least I
yeah,
can hope that we learn from this. But yeah, I don't really know. I know that I need to find a different routine right now because I'm working like 1 day a week, if that, and something's got to give. I got to get up and do yoga. I got to, even if it's just waking up, and I was really good about this, and lately, once again, not so great. I just get up, make a cup of coffee, and then like take an hour to just fully just journal whatever I'm feeling before I actually allow anything to kind of take over my day.
yeah,
But yeah, I think it's important for everybody to kind of find their new normal right now, and try to do self checks on your mental health, on what you need, how can you get it right now, and being open and honest with other people if that. I think that's really important in these times.
for sure. Well, cool. Well, this wasn't an easy thing to talk about for me, and I'm sure not for you either. But I really appreciate you talking to me, and I'm looking forward to the concert. I want to see. I gave you a couple of song requests, or at least one song request. I want to hear you play.
Definitely, Tyler Childers is definitely on the list. Yeah, it's gonna be a little funky. I'm not playing my normal set just because of the circumstances. I clearly have some mental health, I don't want to say issues, I don't like that word, but mental health struggles.
Opportunities.
So mental health opportunities. So my music definitely revolves a little bit more around that. I write what I know, and I don't think that's what's necessary. So I'm going to be doing a lot of fun covers I've never actually done before. I'm kind of terrified, to be honest.
Well, cool. That's cool. You gotta put yourself in uncomfortable situations. That's the way we grow. So, well, I'm really looking forward to it. So, where can people follow you on social media? And then I'll try and link a link in this description here so people can tune into the live stream.
My Instagram is kind of all that I use. I have Facebook. It's my personal Facebook, but I can put a link on there and like make it public for everybody too. But yeah, my Instagram, kind of just keep updating on that. I'll know more within the next 24 hours. And definitely share that with you.
Cool. Well, I'll link that down here in the description. Make sure to follow Katie. And thanks so much, Katie, for joining me. Episode 3 is a wrap. Hopefully we'll tune in. That's right. All right. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks.